So what's going on, guys? This is the Ninja Movies back again with an all new list video. Hope you guys have been enjoying the videos so far in this series. I'll be talking about one of my favorite film franchises of all time, and that is the Star Wars films. Film franchise that really changed the whole landscape of what movies and movie experience can be. It's probably one of the most profitable things on the planet Earth, and I'm going to be ranking the films 1 through 9, least favorite to favorite. And with a film franchise like this, obviously there's so many different opinions. This is just my own personal take on it. So if the films are not in the order that you would personally like, let me know how you'd rank them down below, but you know, don't come at my throat. This is just my own personal opinion. Having a look at my analytics as well, I do appreciate all the views and people tuning in lately, but a lot of you guys are not subscribed right now, so definitely go down below, hit subscribe, make sure you keep up to date with uploads. So basically the whole reason I'm doing this video is I've recently gone back and watched episodes 1 through 9 and have a new outlook on it, some new passionate feelings, especially about the newer trilogy. I just thought this would be a fun, different list video for you guys to compare to some other Star Wars fans out there, how they'd rank their films. So without further ado, let's get straight into it with my number 9 position going to Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. So I'm not doing a film review here today, but honestly, I really wanted to with this set film. The film bothered me so much, but I do just want to say a few things. It's like Harry Potter to me, any sort of major film franchise. In comparison to a bad movie, right, it is not. Because there's so much love and, you know, dedication put into every single Star Wars movie. In terms of Star Wars itself and the lore it's built up and the fan base it has, this is easily the most disappointing one. A lot of people would say Episode 8, and trust me, that was not a fantastic movie either, but this one just pissed me off to no end last night. But for the most part, and my main issue with the J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson trilogy, my biggest problem with this trilogy here is the fact that they don't respect the Force. And I understand it's a made-up entity and this is just something that, you know, it's a nitpick. But if we're talking about Star Wars, we got to talk about the Force, and the way that the new Disney trilogy went about the Force, I actually understand all the complaints about the midichlorians from back in the day when the prequels were a big thing. You know, there's established lore, and there's 6 movies building up Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker as basically the Jesus of this universe. He's the chosen one. And the way that they use the Force in this new trilogy, it's like, was Anakin ever that special? Because honestly, the Force can do fucking anything in this new trilogy, and it's just sort of like in disbelief. It really bothers me. It feels like they just went and threw everything at the wall and they're like, fuck it, you can do this, you can do that. And it just feels so overpowered, but it actually feels like not believable, even though that the original Force concept shouldn't be believable. I feel like death has no purpose in this new trilogy. Like, the amount of times that you think somebody's died and then they come back, it is infuriating. And I guess some people would have been excited to see Palpatine again. Me, personally, I fucking wasn't. Like, I just don't know why they did this plotline. I hated it from start to finish. It is easily the most frustrating of all the films. Once again, I'm talking in rankings of Star Wars films. It's not a bad movie, in, you know, considering what bad movies are out there. But in Star Wars, this is the one. It's just a poor film. I really didn't enjoy it. I hate this new trilogy with a passion. Moving on to my number 8 position, we have Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. And now, this is a lot of people's least favorite film, and I get it. It wasn't a great movie, but there was things that I did enjoy about it. I don't enjoy Rian Johnson's humor at all. It gives me a very like Marvel movie effect, and I'm not a big fan of it in Star Wars. There's some breathtaking scenes. I really like Snoke's bodyguards and everything with that fight. I really like that Rian Johnson with Kylo Ren's lightsaber, he sort of like the sound that it crackles with, it sounds like Thomas Shelby smoking a cigarette. I fucking love that. But the whole plot with Rose and Finn, like, I actually had to look up why Rian Johnson got the gig as director, and apparently the CEO or whatever said that he's really good at writing strong female characters. Explain Rose to me then, because like, I've never hated a character in Star Wars more, and just thought, what a pointless side quest this is. You know, it already started off with a bad taste in my mouth as soon as Luke throws the lightsaber away, and it's meant to be like, how did he do that? But like, it's just like a spit in the face of the whole concept of Star Wars, in my opinion. I enjoyed the battle on the Salt Planet, obviously very visually pleasing, but once again, just characters you know, with this Force ability, but as soon as Leia is floating through space, and I get it, you know, she's a Skywalker and she's allowed to have abilities that were never really shown, but her floating through space, man, that's when I'm just like, alright, they're just, once again, they're just throwing shit at the wall. They're like, she could do this, she could survive. I don't understand what they were trying to get out of, like, showing her get blown out the fucking spaceship, and then you're like, oh my god, she's dead, and then 2 seconds later, she's just hitting the Superman down. These two movies are so infuriating to me as a series. Like, honestly, this is only the second time I've watched both of them, and I would happily never watch them again. I don't think they're a good representation of Star Wars at all, and that's why they're at the bottom spot for sure. Moving on to my number 7 position, and this is The Force Awakens. Now, I actually did see this at midnight premiere. It was a big event. I was so excited, and I remember enjoying this movie, and this is the only one out of the newer trilogy that I had watched more than once. I'd seen it a couple times, and yes, it just repeats a lot of A New Hope, but for me, I grew up on the prequels. Like, that was my Star Wars trilogy back in the day. Like, I saw them at the cinemas as a child, so I don't have the hatred towards the prequels that a lot of people did. But a return to form made a lot of sense to, you know, sort of bring some fans back. And, you know, this movie just played it safe, but we got to see, you know, introductions to characters that I really liked, like Kylo Ren. You know, they brought back Harrison Ford and Chewie, so that was a beautiful sort of sentiment. New planets, we had a new storyline. You know, this is chapter 1, and, you know, it was pretty good. I didn't mind it. I can't fault it. It does play it so safe that it's not as memorable, but it definitely is the best of the newest trilogy, and this is before I had the hatred for where the story was going. It had hope. You know, it gave you hope that the trilogy could be something interesting. It didn't turn out that way, but Force Awakens is a fine movie, visually pleasing, some awesome battle scenes, and some introductions to characters that you could personally think that you would see enjoying in the future, even if it didn't turn out that way. Moving on to my number 6 position, we have The Phantom Menace. Now, this is a movie that got absolutely panned and people hated, and this movie came out in 1999. Which is the same year I was born. So once again, I grew up with the Star Wars prequels. Now, the biggest fault for this movie is it's just a democracy film in space, really. Like, it is a lot more talking, a lot less action, a lot more explaining of things that didn't need explaining, such as the midichlorians and things like that. But honestly, it has the introduction of droids, which I love the droids, man. I don't know if it's just because they have less films with them in it, but I find them really satisfying, much more interesting than the stormtroopers themselves. Of course, it's got corny writing. Like, every time I think of the Phantom Menace, all I can think of is, are you an angel? Like, you know, it's got that sort of writing, but the pod race scene, man, Qui-Gon Jinn, Darth Maul, I think they fumbled a lot in the prequels where they sort of became like Amazing Spider-Man movies where they're just cramming as many villains in as they can, because in this film they had potential with Darth Maul and just got rid of him. It's always going to be the thing that plagues this prequel trilogy, because Darth Maul was really like a big seller of the Phantom Menace, and then they just chop him in half and throw him down the pit. On a rewatch, it's really, you know, a lot more enjoyable than a lot of people give it credit for. I think you should really just go back with a, you know, new mind, and especially if you've seen the Disney trilogy, this movie ain't half bad at all. It's a decent Star Wars movie with some great special effects. I know a lot of people hated Jar Jar Binks, and that's fair, I can give that credit, but the actual Gungan race and seeing the whole, you know, underwater city and everything, it's breathtaking. Like, this movie really had a lot of great concepts, and I thought, you know, it's a decent film. Moving on to my number 5 position, and that goes to Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Now, me and my brother grew up on this prequel trilogy, and he loathes this film. He thinks it's so goddamn boring. I don't get it. I don't know if I'm in a mirage where I'm like, maybe this was one of the first movies I was watching, but I really enjoy this film. Kamino is one of my favorite planets in the whole Star Wars universe. Jango Fett, I think I enjoyed, even though he gets killed off in the same way as Boba, you know, short and quick. I think Jango Fett is so much cooler to me than Boba. I can understand though, because I grew up with Jango, but the sound of his pistols, everything, man, I love it. We have the introduction to Hayden Christensen, which, you know, he does better in Revenge of the Sith, but I think he's okay. He is obviously delivering a lot of corny lines in this movie. The writing in this film, admittedly, is probably the worst out of the prequels, but I think the variety of planets in this movie, clone army, seeing Yoda in action, Count Dooku, the whole end final, you know, scene where you get to see a bunch of Jedis fighting in a tournament. It's just awesome, man. It's shit we hadn't seen, and I think this movie gets a lot of hate. Some people really put it at like the bottom of their list. I just don't get it. I thoroughly enjoy Attack of the Clones. It's got a lot of faults, but it's visually pleasing. I love seeing a lot more of the Jedi cancel. And this is the whole thing that really bothers me about the Disney trilogy as well, is I feel like there was no training put into Rey at all. Like, first face off with Kylo Ren, never held a lightsaber, can beat the man that's been training. But in these prequels, it really shows with the cancelled, like, you're training for years of your life to even be, you know, somewhat decent. That's the, I'm just going back on this new trilogy. I just can't stand it. I can't stand it. Coming in at number 4 is the original Star Wars, A New Hope. Now, for me personally, this is it's an amazing movie. And, you know, once we're in the top 6, once we're past the Disney trilogy, these are all movies I deeply, deeply love. And for a lot of people, this is number 1 because this is the original. But for me personally, I just think it's a great film. Visually, if you want to watch this on Blu-ray or 4K or something, it is breathtaking. I love that these movies feel real. They do. The original trilogy feels so real compared to anything made in the future because it's not just done on, you know, on a green screen. Like, people are really interacting with each other. The lore in this film is beautiful. I love, you know, getting to see the Death Star for the first time. I love seeing Darth Vader, Luke, you know, really discovering his abilities. It's the movie that started it all, man, and I have no faults to it. It is just not my personal favorite. I don't rewatch it as much as some of the others, and that's why, you know, I don't have to go into what makes this movie great, because everyone has talked about this film extensively. What can I really add? It's just sitting at number 4 for me, and that's all I have to say. So, coming in at number 3 is Star Wars Episode 6, The Return of the Jedi. Now, this originally was lower down my list back in the day, but on a rewatch, I really think this movie is underappreciated. Yes, there is a lot of Ewok action. I don't mind the Ewok, but it just feels like sort of a side tale in this film. But the thing that I did like on the rewatch is I did not realize how much time Darth Vader and Luke actually spend together in this movie. Like, there is a lot of scenes with them together throughout the film about conflicting, you know, ideologies, and it really made the ending a lot more emotional than I remember it being. Seriously, give it a rewatch if you haven't. I think it's a great bow to the end of the trilogy. Like, this really was a great end chapter. Not like the fucking Rise of Skywalker, but, you know, let's stop talking about that movie. I think it did everything I wanted it to. Honestly, it wrapped up so perfectly. I loved this movie start to finish. It's like plain and simple. This one is one of the most fun Star Wars movies. Like, even though there's so much high stakes in this film, it has the most fun with it, you know, and Endor is such a beautiful place, and like, it's the end of the Empire. Like, this was so goddamn cool to me. So coming in at my number 2 position, you've been waiting to see it, and that is Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Now, I know a lot of people find this to be the best of the prequels. Hands down it is, of course. It was the first MA-15+ movie I ever saw at the cinemas. I think it was the only Star Wars movie that I had seen at the cinemas up until Episode 7. So, for me personally, like, it runs deep. Like, this was the most fantastic movie to me as a kid. But honestly, I think this movie has the greatest action scenes that Star Wars has ever done. Like, starting off right from the get-go with that space battle. General Grievous. I'm also a big sucker for General Grievous's bodyguards for some reason. I was also a fan of Snoke's bodyguards, so I don't know. Something about these guards, they just intrigue me. Droids in this, once again, I didn't really touch on the fact that the droider cart is just one of the coolest concepts that I think Lucas ever came up with. I will say that a lot of people find that the prequels do too much choreography with this, you know, the actual battling of lightsabers, but in this movie, man, oh, honestly, the end fight, you can't tell me that isn't the coolest thing you've ever seen. I think the choreography is represented in the fact that I was saying that there's a lot more put into being a Jedi in the prequels. Like, it's years of practice. I feel like you really would get that good if you've done, like, what, 16 to 18 years of nothing but training. Obviously, we get the one little scene of Darth Vader at the end, and that really pissed a lot of people off. But I don't think we needed too much. Like, we already had 3 movies of it. Yes, I would have liked a little bit more, but Hayden Christensen killed it in this movie. I really, really did enjoy it. And even though the writing, once again, is kind of trash, it's so much more memorable in this. Like, the way that he says "I hate you" at the end of the movie is so memeable. Me and my friends literally can quote so much of the end scene. Like, it is that iconic to us. Honestly, it's one of the most fun experiences I've ever had. I grew up with the video games, I grew up with the toys. It is a lot to do with nostalgia, but Revenge of the Sith is just like one of the best Star Wars experiences I've ever had. It really shows like a downfall of a friendship. I think it really was a good end chapter to the prequels. It really made, you know, journeying into A New Hope so much more special, in my opinion. And coming in at number 1, it's the only one I haven't mentioned, so no need to drum roll. We have The Empire Strikes Back. And I just want to say, this is probably one of the best, if not the best sequels of all time. I know a lot of people say T2, but honestly, Empire Strikes Back had everything. It is a chef's kiss to this entire franchise. The iconic scenes with the carbonite at the end in Cloud City, you know, it introduces us to people like Lando. You see so much more of Darth Vader and his menacing. It has the Luke, I am your father. Like, this is one of the most quotable movies in movie history. Yeah, Princess Leia and Han Solo falling in love. The Battle of Hoth, like, what does this movie not have? It improved on everything that was in the first film, which was already a masterpiece. It is just one of the best follow-ups ever. I love Empire Strikes Back to a fault. Like, definitely, I knew even writing up this list, it's always been my favorite, and that's so hard to say because, like, anywhere in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I could flip them around. I can't flip number 1. Empire Strikes Back is a flawless film. It would be the one that I would show to people to be like, let's get into Star Wars. You want to see a great sci-fi movie? This is it. So that's my personal opinion and my personal list on the 9 Star Wars films. Let me know how I did down below, how it would compare to your rankings. Once again, it's my own personal opinion. Don't hate a brother for, you know, putting some of the prequels a little higher up. That's just me personally. Please leave this video a like, add it to your favorites and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.